This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey, everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat show. We're going to talk about the game against UT Martin that many of you saw, many of you didn't see, as it was through the streaming service. And second half of the show, good friend of mine, Matt Hayes. I'm going to jump all over the country with Matt and give you a blueprint idea of what's going on nationally in college football. We're going to talk about some of those other SEC games, Florida State, LSU. Matt's for playoff teams. Matt, of course, used to write for the Sporting News. Now works for Saturday Down South, does radio in Jacksonville. I think you're going to enjoy the second half of the show. A lot of football talk, as I'm going to ask him some very hard pressing questions about SEC coaches and their futures and what he thinks of the Georgia Bulldogs. So Georgia opened with a 48-7 win. And I was like everyone else early on. I'm going, oh my gosh, what's happened to this offense? Georgia had to punt 3 out of their first 4 series. Not the way you draw it up. Carson missed on some throws. And I get, overall, Carson finished the day strong. His numbers were good by the end of the night. It was a decent statistical performance for Carson when you look at it in whole. And by the end of the night, Georgia had, 559 yards of total offense. I mean, you put it into perspective, and there were only 3 games last year where Georgia had more total yards of offense than they did Saturday night. But, when you think about your frame of reference, and the last time we saw Georgia play before this game, they were beating TCU 65-7, and they were scoring 50 points on LSU, and they were beating Ohio State 42-41. And we're all sitting there, and it's 7-0 Georgia over UT Martin with 5 minutes left before halftime. I understand why that product, it's not the same product, but lo and behold, we step back. Carson 21-31, 294 yards. Touchdown, also rushed for a touchdown, no interceptions. I thought he did okay. I didn't think he did terrible. And I'll say this, I don't think Stetson Bennett would have done any better. I don't think the score would have been any different with Stetson Bennett on Saturday night. You know why? Because Stetson Bennett, just like Carson Beck, didn't have Kenny McIntosh in the backfield to dump it off to or to hand off to. Didn't have Darnell Washington to blow up 2 guys blocking on one play. Didn't have Adonai Mitchell on one side. Didn't have Ladd McConkey on the left. Didn't have Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. There were a lot of skill position guys that were missing. And in the version of Kendall Milton that we saw, I'm still trying to figure out why he was out there. Look, this is what I think about Kendall Milton. I think Kendall's a leader. I think Kendall wants to be on the field so bad. But I don't think he should have been, because that wasn't close to the version of Kendall Milton that we're going to see when he gets completely healthy. And the most important thing for Georgia to win another national title is to have Kendall Milton healthy by the end of the year, not to watch him play at 80 or 90%, against Ball State or UT Martin. I don't know what that proved. I already knew. You've seen Kendall on this program when we had him and Kenny McIntosh doing a show with me a couple of years ago. The DawgNation audience knows Kendall Milton. And 75% of the Georgia fan base probably knows Kendall Milton. Maybe the NFL people don't. Maybe there's NFL whispers. There's durability, but nothing should be in Kendall's mind, in my opinion, except getting himself 100%. Because when he's 100%, this guy has NFL talents and he looks amazing. But he didn't look amazing. He looked ordinary, and there's nothing ordinary about him. He didn't move the pile like usual. He didn't show the breakaway speed, because he was playing hurt. And I was shocked that he was out there. I know he wanted to be out there. I was shocked that Del McGee, couldn't convince him, to sit it out. Now, maybe there was no risk of further injury, but from my experience, they said his hamstring tightened up. I hope Georgia has Kendall Milton for Auburn September 30th, because they're going to need Kendall to win some big games. The other running backs, I thought Roderick Robinson, he did okay. I thought he's a big, powerful runner. Looked like he got tripped up a little bit easier, needs to run with his feet a little bit higher. You heard Kirby Smart say after the game, how many tackles did the backs break? When we asked him about the run game, he kind of put some of that on the running backs. Dejon Edwards did not play. Kirby Smart said he could have played, but he's trying to rest up that sprained knee. Cash Jones, catches the ball, nice little player. He's a walk-on, looks like a walk-on. Didn't look dynamic. Doesn't look like a guy that's going to play in the NFL. Doesn't look like a guy, that you want carrying your team. Is he a good spot player? Has he worked hard? Yes, it's a great story. But this is not a guy, that you're going to count on, to move the pile at 4th and 2, or even, do anything that, make anybody miss in the open field. Just didn't see it out of him. And I know that's raining on the parade, but look, it's a reality here. It's not about nice stories now. Georgia's trying to win championship. Andrew Paul thought he looked pretty good. Didn't look like he was all the way back either. So the running back room, it is a concern. They'll get better. Kirby Smart knows how to manage a roster. The Milton thing was the only thing that surprised me, but obviously Kendall really wanted to be out there for his team. Like Kirby said, didn't want Georgia to go out there with just 2 guys that could have played before. And I can appreciate the leadership, but I just want to see that guy get healthy. He deserves it. He deserves a breakout year. Brock Bowers was a guy that, playing with a groin or whatever it was, minor injury. Kirby said, look, you guys don't even know about this, but Brock has been injured and he's out there touching the ball. 5 catches for 78 yards, breaking tackles. He looked unbelievable. And the UT Martin coach, I did a story on this, and a lot of you read it. It's blown up on the website. If you go to DawgNation.com and read what UT Martin coach Jason Simpson said, he talked about Bowers and how 60 of these 78 yards that he got were after the catch. And this double tight end formation, it's just a nightmare. But again, injuries, right? You got 3 healthy scholarship tight ends right now. So how much can you go double tight end? I thought Oscar Delp, nice touchdown catch on a ball slightly underthrown. Thought he did some good things. And they need him to do good things, because when Georgia puts 2 tight ends out there, it is really, really tough. The receivers that played, I thought that you saw, Dominic Lovett did some nice things, but he also dropped a touchdown pass. I wasn't, I thought he did pretty good, but maybe not as dynamic as I thought. When I think of dynamic, I think of guys like a Donnie Mitchell that can go up and get the ball. Maybe Dominic hasn't had the chance yet. Looks a little bit quicker, faster, sharper, than Kieras. Obviously he had a drop. Remains to be seen if he can be as consistent as Kieras, if he can continue to block like Kieras, but a pretty nice option out of the slot, but he's a complementary player. I don't think Dominic Lovett is a guy that is going to carry you in the receiving court. They really need Ladd McConkey back, and Ladd was out, with the back injury. It was a game time decision. Probably could have gone if he needed to, but wanted to rest that back. Understands it's a long season. Mekhi Muse scored on a nice 54-yard, took a short pass, took it 54 yards upfield. Nice player. Good to see him in the return game. Love him in the return game. Solid as a receiver. CJ Smith, this is the name to circle. This is a guy that emerged, caught that deep ball, 47-yard bomb from Vandergriff. This is a guy that needs to emerge. CJ Smith, circle that name. This is a guy that Kirby was very, very high on after the game. See if he is the guy to emerge. So Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, I think he was being disciplined for the off-field stuff. He'll be back this week against Ball State. Don't know about Ladd. I would lean towards him being back maybe, but not sure. Just not sure how he responds. He goes through training, or the training table every day, and they'll evaluate that at game time. So and Vandergriff looked good when he got in there, by the way. Obviously the deep ball, the touchdown pass was pretty doggone impressive. I thought he did really well. As a whole, his ability to run the ball brings another dimension, but we haven't seen enough. 2 series isn't enough to evaluate Brock Vandagriff. Now, the fact that Kirby's playing Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton, that is telling. It tells you he wants that depth there. It tells you he may ultimately at some point, want to have that running quarterback option. I'm not saying there's a quarterback controversy, because there's not. There's no controversy about it. Carson Beck is the guy. Right. There's no competition every week and, who are they going to pick? It's not that. And it's not going to be that. Kirby's put the ball in Carson Beck's hands, but you do have another quarterback option back there. And that is really important when you look at this probably being a 15-game season, at least a 14-game season. A lot can go wrong. And it's good to have that championship depth. And that's been a difference maker for Georgia. I mean, like I said, 2021, JT Daniels gets hurt, Stetson Bennett comes in. So sometimes it takes 2 quarterbacks to win championships. With this Georgia team, that may be the case because it's going to get tough. You can see that this team needs to grow a lot. And I think Kirby said that. Now, some guys grew up a little bit. That was their first time really being leaned on. Saturday night against UT Martin. Again, Mekhi Muse, that was a huge game for him. So important. CJ Smith, really important snaps. Oscar Delp played some, obviously, in the national title game and against Ohio State when Darnell Washington got injured. So Delp has had some big game experience, but he got a lot of snaps in that game. Defensively, how about Tyke Smith? I mean, Tyke was 6 tackles. You saw him flying around. He's now completely healthy. He's moved into that nickel position, that we saw Bullard play last year. So I thought it was a big game for Tyke Smith. I saw how quick he was in pursuit. Really nice open field tackler. Just overall, I thought the defense was solid. I did have some questions about a couple of the runs. I'm not used to seeing FCS teams run for that many yards on Georgia. I mean, this is a team that led the nation in run defense. And, quite frankly, UT Martin was able to do some things on them I wasn't expecting. And Kirby said, yeah, they used their quarterback a lot. I know their quarterback was their leading rusher. I think he rushed for, I don't know, whatever it was, 46, 47 yards on 6 carries. But the team collectively had 132 yards rushing on Georgia. An FCS team rushed for 132 yards on Georgia. And it was pretty consistent gains. I mean, I think the quarterback had a 26-yard run. But other than that, there was a 10-yard run by one running back, an 11-yard run by another run. They've gone games without guys hitting double digits. So I think that the defensive front against the run, I think there's work that needs to be done. I think we knew there was going to be some drop-off there without Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. And I think those guys are working on that right now. So to me, Georgia, work in progress. I did not think they were the most impressive team in the SEC the first week. I thought the most impressive team in the SEC the first week was Alabama. And I don't know how it ends. I know that Georgia has a lot of potential once they get Ladd back on the field, once they get Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint back on the field, once Kendall Milton gets healthy again, or they get Dejon Edwards on the field. But right now, with the skill position guys that I saw them play with, I was not as impressed with Georgia as I was Alabama in week 1. I thought Alabama looked really strong, beating a better team. Middle Tennessee State is a better team than UT Martin, and Alabama looked impressive. Tennessee, Virginia, I'm not drinking the Tennessee Kool-Aid yet. I know they won convincingly, but it was kind of a slow start, and Tennessee just doesn't look as explosive. They lost some skill guys that I don't think they've really replaced yet, and I'm not buying in on their defense. So I know gambling's legal in Tennessee, and I'm sure a lot of Vols fans, rushed to their bookies, the legal bookies, and, put down money on Tennessee against Georgia based on what they saw the first half of Georgia, UT Martin. But I'm not buying into it. I still think Georgia's the class of the East. Texas A&M was a program that impressed me. Put up a lot of points, 52 points. Game 1 with Bobby Petrino. Stay tuned. I said at the start of the year, I thought A&M, LSU, or Alabama could win the West. I still say that. I'm not as down on LSU as everyone else. They went up halftime, they're leading 17-14. They end up losing 45-24. I've seen that before. Remember when Georgia was beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa at halftime in 2020? Weren't they winning like 24-17 and end up losing 41-24? I think that's right. So I've seen how things can flip and how teams can gain momentum. I think Florida State's really good. I said before the year, I thought the Seminoles were a playoff team. I'll say it again. I think they're outstanding. They bring back a lot of guys. I think they've got the right culture there right now. I think Mike Norvell is a really good coach. So I'm not holding that game against LSU so much. I still think LSU is a top 10 team. I just think Florida State's a top 3 or 4 team. And I think the Seminoles are real. So again, Florida, meanwhile, and I said this last week, I don't know that Billy Napier gets through the season. And I know he's got a $31.9 million buyout. I know people, that's just so much money. But they're building the stadium, or they're enhancing their stadium. It's supposed to be $4 or $5 or $6 or $7 or $800, $900 million. If you're finding hundreds of millions of dollars to put into your stadium and facilities, somebody's going to find $31 million to fire a coach that they don't think can win, because you got to have the right guy. And I'm going to say this, if Florida loses to Tennessee at home in 2 weeks, I think Billy Napier will be fired this year. I'm not going to say midseason. but I think he will be fired. If they lose to Tennessee at home, I think he gets fired. And it's not, whether you should or you shouldn't, or it's fair. It's only year 2, and that seems extreme. But I think it's an extreme situation because it's not just that you lose, it's how you lose. It's the fact that they look so unorganized at times against Utah, that they had 2 number 3s on the field at the same time, that guys are jumping, that the transfer quarterback didn't look like a good decision. You're telling me, is that the best transfer quarterback Florida could get? You got to do better than that. And recruiting is a big part of this. And if they lose their momentum, I remember when Butch Jones was fired from Tennessee, the final blow wasn't losing to Missouri. It was losing Cade Mays as a commitment, the Knoxville kid who ended up at Georgia, right? And before he obviously went back. But when your program loses momentum and on the recruiting trail, that's when they turn the lights out, because then the future is gone. And right now they need some momentum. They need to beat Tennessee at home in 2 weeks. So I'm going to talk to Matt Hayes about Billy Napier. Matt actually covered Florida for a long time. He lives in Jacksonville. He knows that program like the back of his hand. So we're going to talk about all those things. I did ask Kirby Smart at the press conference today about Brian Kelly's comment when he was talking about, what happened in the second half. He said, well, for some reason, we thought we were somebody else. We thought we were the 2-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs or something. I don't know what we thought, but we were mistaken. And I asked Kirby, I said, what does that say when other coaches, your peers, are kind of throwing you out there like that, kind of, putting you on a pedestal? And Kirby said that, that you could get, humbled, within a week, all of a sudden you just can't assume, right? You just can't necessarily assume that just because other people are talking about you, you're not going to buy into that. I mean, that's, of course not. I mean, Kirby Smart is a guy who recognizes that you're always 1 week away. And that was his direct quote. He said it says that you're 1 week away from humility. He says, all it says are, how are we going to practice today? Very process oriented, not going to drink his own Kool-Aid, very well aware that his team has a long way to go. And they've got players to do it, and they got great coaches to do it. But coming out of the gate, I thought Alabama looked sharper than Georgia coming out of the gate. If I'm doing my rankings this week, I would probably put Alabama number 1 in the conference and Georgia number 2 after 1 week. That changes from week to week. Let's see how they look this week. But for now, I thought Alabama was impressive. And I'm not so sure that Texas A&M wasn't the 3rd most impressive team. Like I said, I'm just not in on Tennessee. As for Kentucky, yeah, they beat Ball State. Ball State gave them a hard time for a half. Ball State up next for the Dogs. Kirby Smart mentioned, yeah, they're in the same conference as Kent State. And we know that Georgia's going to be stubborn. I would say this, for the fans that are down on Mike Bobo, this is just ludicrous to me, because this is Kirby Smart telling Bobo what to do. You have to understand that Kirby oversees the offense. Now, how Mike operates within the parameters, but Kirby wants to run the ball. Kirby wants to pound the ball early. And he even told everybody that he talked to the coordinators before the game and said, hey, we're going to lean on the defense. We're going to have a game plan that's going to lean on the defense. Well, what does that mean? It means field position football. It means not turning the ball over. It means not taking chances. So that was a conservative game plan in a very deliberate way. And you saw what happened, right? Georgia, it was a tight game. Nobody's turning the ball over. Georgia, with all those body blows early, all those punches in the mouth at the line of scrimmage, didn't amount to much. It didn't seem, but it takes an effect on a team. And in the second half, UT Martin, I mean, they were down 17-0. Next thing you know, it's 48-7. Georgia took over that game. Could have even been worse. So Kirby knows what he's doing. He got to play all these kids. He played 3 quarterbacks. He cleared the bench, and he still won by 41 points. And it probably should have been more, if not for a somewhat controversial call in the end zone on the one UT Martin touchdown. But I think everybody should feel pretty good, even though it wasn't the team that we saw leaving SoFi Stadium after. It was never going to be that team. That's what you have to understand. It was never going to be last year, because there is no Kenny McIntosh, and there is no Darnell Washington, and there is no Adonai Mitchell. And then you add to it that McConkey was out and Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint was out. I mean, those are 5 really key figures off last year's team. And Kendall Milton wasn't healthy. That's 6, right? So that wasn't the same team. So it wasn't going to look like the same offense. So I hope people keep that in mind and remember that, Mike Bobo works for Kirby, and, Kirby's going to be the one that's going to basically have a hand in what the run pass ratio is going to be. Can it change in game? Sure. But Kirby wants to go out and establish the run in every game because he understands how difficult it is when teams can't handle the run play. It makes your play action go. Like Kirby said at halftime on the Georgia radio broadcast, right? You got to get that, they're a shot team, right? They're a run team and play action shot team. And that's what he sees this team as with Carson Beck right now. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to recognize our sponsor, Ingles. Of course, we always appreciate Ingles, all the years of sponsorship and support they've given DawgNation and Georgia football, through their sponsorship of DawgNation in this program. Second half of the show, like I said, you're going to want to stick around. If you love college football and you like strong opinions, I'm going to ask Matt Hayes some pretty hard questions. I'm going to put him on the spot. So stick around, enjoy this message from our sponsor, Ingles, and after the break, we'll talk with Matt Hayes.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Welcome back to the program, and as promised, special guest Matt Hayes. And of course, a lot of you might recognize Matt's byline from his old days at the Sporting News, now with Saturday Down South and 1010XL in Jacksonville. Fantastic radio host and a longtime friend, certainly an SEC and college football expert. Matt, thanks for joining the show.
Griff, it's my pleasure.
And so here we are, week one, and I'm not going to go right down the game. I want to just start right out with biggest surprise of the opening weekend.
Colorado. I mean, it has to be. I don't know how it wouldn't be for anyone. You're talking again. It's not the same TCU team, but Chandler Morris is a good quarterback, and it's not like they don't have players, and they were at home. So Colorado to go in there with 81, 82 brand new players, that's a big deal. The thing is this too, honestly, is Deion can talk all he wants about, his Gucci luggage. He's got a 5-star quarterback. That's number one, his son. His son's the real deal. Nick Saban won his son badly. He's got some really good skill players. He's got a really good freshman. So, I mean, it's when you have a really good quarterback like he has, you can hide a lot of flaws. They have flaws that will eventually be exposed. But right now, I think that for game one, with 81, 82 brand new players, and you go on the road and you beat a team that was in the national championship game last year, that's impressive. That's impressive.
As a 3-touchdown underdog, and you're right, it's not the same TCU. TCU suddenly has lost 3 out of their last 4 games, by the way, which is pretty amazing. They lost the Big 12 title game as well, and maybe Michigan beat themselves as much as TCU. Not to pile on Sonny Dykes, but I think the shine is off Sonny, I think we could say, after losing 3 out of the last 4. And Matt, the odds makers already have Colorado as a 2-point home favorite against Nebraska, which tells you they think they're going to lose to Nebraska, because that looks like easy money. If you saw Nebraska play dead against Minnesota, you said, "Oh my gosh, same old Nebraska." And we're not here to get all excited about the Big 12, Pac-12, Colorado, Nebraska game, but when I get it. First, you're not buying into this Deion Sanders thing all year. I mean, this is still what, a 5 or a 6 win team, right?
I still think they're going to be exposed at some point. I like the fact that they won their first game. That's pretty. I mean, no matter what you think, it's pretty impressive that you put together a team in 8 months of guys that really don't even know each other, and you get some kind of cohesion where you go out on the field after a month of fall camp, and boom, there you go. You score 48 points in one game. I mean, it's hard to do something like that if you got a team that's been together you got a bunch of 50-year seniors. He's got guys, Griff, he literally threw together. So that's why I think it's most important for me, the biggest win of the week. But I will say this, one of the best parts about this weekend, and we can get into the much better games because there's much better games, but I love the fact that Texas Tech goes on the road to Ohio, loses in overtime. This is a week and a half after Brent Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, at that speaking event there in Lubbock, basically told Texas Tech, "Hey, I'll be in Austin, win that game," because No, he's upset at Texas because Texas know you left for the SEC, and he calls them out right away and says, "Hey, Texas Tech, go win that game in Austin. You might want to win that game in Laramie first. How about that?"
Yeah, against Wyoming. Yeah, pretty embarrassing loss there. Speaking of embarrassing losses, Florida comes to mind, and that's kind of been a theme lately. And everybody, this is what everybody says. You wrote it, $31.9 million.
A lot of money.
That is the 31. Is it worth $31.9 million to fire Billy Napier? I got to tell you, Matt. People said, what does he got to do? And I said, okay, I'm not saying he's got to win 6. I'm not saying he's got to win 7. Look like a well-coached team. Look like a team that has gotten better. Matt, that was a terrible exhibition. And if you're spending, this is what the Gator reporters are telling me. They've been known to exaggerate before, decades and decades worth, Matt and Mike Bianchi days. But this team right here, if you're spending $900 million on your stadium, $31 million to get rid of a coach is a drop in the bucket. So where do you stand with Billy Napier and the Gators right now?
How much do they spend on the stadium? $900 million. I thought it was
that's talking to Edgar Thompson, good friend of ours. Edgar says, yeah, we're reporting 400 or 500, but they're hearing from people that by the time this whole thing's over with, it could be closer to 900 million or 800 million, or maybe even reach $1 billion. They're talking big down there in Gainesville as far as what they're going to do for the Swamp. I'm just thinking, if you're raising all this money for the stadium, $31 million to get rid of and let's face it, is it too soon to say he's a bad coach? Let me just make that, I'm going to boil it down to that question. Is it too soon to give up on Billy Napier?
Yes, of course it is. Come on, man. Okay. You can't give up on him. He's got a track record of a head coach. Again, it's at Lafayette, which is certainly, I guess they call it Louisiana now. It's at Louisiana, which certainly is not the SEC. But, I mean, he's proven he can build a program. Now, the problem is this. You're in a situation in the league where his biggest rival is the number one program in all of college football. His biggest rival recruits better than anybody in college football. You look at the conference he's in, he's got Alabama, he's got Georgia, he's got LSU. He's got these heavyweights, Texas A&M, that can recruit. Texas and Oklahoma are coming in. Everybody's coming into the state of Florida. He's got to recruit well. I think this is his first 2 classes were decent by elite SEC standards. Okay. So top 15, top 13 classes. This one he's got now is they're number 3 right now, but you keep throwing stuff out there like they did last weekend or last Thursday, and you might see a couple of those recruits flip a little bit. I just think they're in a situation right now where they're paying for what happened in the offseason with quarterbacks. I think they're better defensively because they have better players. The young players are better than the older guys they had last year. And I think they'll be better defensively. They're still going to make mistakes, but they'll get better as the year goes on. Offensively, I think the line is not as good as last year. They were saying it was going to be good or better. It's not as good as last year's line. They're still going to try and run the ball. The bottom line is they have Graham Mertz at quarterback, and that's what's going to hurt them. And they almost had Michael Pratt, the kid from Tulane, 11th hour decision. He decides to stay at Tulane. They had Jaden Rashada, the 5-star kid, and that blew up because of an NIL situation. It's strange. Austin Reed, the Western Kentucky, led the nation in passing last year. A really good quarterback. He's from St. Augustine, Florida, wanted to go play for the Gators. They didn't want him. So they're stuck with Graham Mertz now. And he keeps seeing people are emailing me and they're coming after me on social media. He threw for 333 yards. If you watched that game and you saw that quarterback and you thought any of those 333 yards were significant or were big plays, smart throws, there may have been 1 or 2 good throws. The longest throw of the game was the deep ball where Pearsall did the double move, had him beat by 10 yards. All Mertz had to do was loft it out there. He runs under, it's a touchdown. Instead, he throws it to the boundary. And Pearsall's got to do the double foot tap just to stay in bounds and get 47 yards. So the problem is the quarterback. There's no doubt about it. And the quarterback runs everything. That's the way it is in college football right now. It's a vertical game. It's a quarterback-driven game. That's why we have questions prior to the season at Alabama. That's why there are questions at Georgia. You can go on and on. That's why there's questions at Ohio State. Everywhere you go, that's why everybody thinks Michigan is so set to win it all, because they've got a guy, J.J. McCarthy, who's going into his 3rd year, but really his 2nd year as a starter where you really make the big leap. And that's why everybody believes in Michigan right now. So it's the quarterback. It's not that hard to figure out. Look at the FSU LSU game last night. 2 really good quarterbacks one played better than the other. And again, one's offensive line clearly protected better than the other two. But Jordan Travis, my God. Woo! That's a dude. That's a dude right there.
Well, I think everyone, most everyone right now probably feels pretty good if you've got Florida State projected in the playoffs, as I do. And we'll see what Clemson does tonight. Clemson and Duke playing tonight. But yeah, that Florida State LSU game, that was such a coin toss game. And, I still think you play the game 10 times, it comes out 5-5 because of what you said, Matt. These are two really good teams, fringe playoff, if not playoff team. These two top 10 teams, no doubt about it. What did you make of Brian Kelly's comment that, we forgot who we were, we thought we were something, whatever. We thought we were two-time defending national champion Georgia. What's your theory? Because Brian Kelly went out of the way to drop that. There's a reason. I have a theory on this. I want to hear your theory. He said it at media days too, that they were targeting at Georgia and trying to close the gap. Why does Brian Kelly keep dropping Georgia in these big moments, do you think?
Oh, I think because Georgia's that's what everybody's shooting for, man. Georgia's the top of the mountain right now.
So wait, so you think this is bona fide? See, because I don't think it's bona fide. I don't think it's bona fide praise.
I can't wait to hear this. Let's hear it.
I don't know. I think this is Brian Kelly's way of sticking it in Nick Saban and reminding Nick Saban. I think this is three-dimensional chess. I think he's trying to piss off Nick Saban by
saying Georgia's number one.
Absolutely. There's no other reason. Why would you compliment just randomly? He doesn't have a relationship with Kirby Smart. This is three-dimensional.
Random. They're back-to-back national champions. I don't know if you can say that's random. I mean, they are what everybody's shooting for now.
I just don't think it's that simple. I think this is recruiting. I think this is trying to say LSU's not gonna that it's not. He's changing. He's going to help change the narrative. And if he can't do it, he'll use Georgia to help change the narrative because he doesn't got to beat Georgia every year. He's got to beat Alabama every year.
Well,
at least one more year.
If that's what it is, and I don't agree with you, but I'm fine to hear your theory. What's his name, Mulder, and the X-Files theory. I'm fine to hear that. Okay. I think the bigger issue is probably Harold Perkins had 59 snaps last night, and he only rushed on 21 of them or 22 of them. That might be a bigger issue for LSU. That's all I'm saying.
So maybe the fact they're trying, and we've seen coaches try to do. We remember Leonard Little back in the day when they try to take a pass rusher and he wants to play a different position.
Right, just get him on the edge and go get the quarterback, man. It's not that.
Go get the guy. He wants to make more money, so they, coach, can I play here? Whatever you want in this day and age. Because if you say no, he might be on the next bus out of town.
Right, but he can make more money as an edge guy. That's the whole thing. The edge guys are what everybody wants in the NFL now.
But maybe they think this. I don't know what they think, but obviously a mistake. To your point, when you're not getting the most out of your players. Let's talk about Alabama because I was impressed with Alabama, and I know Georgia fans probably don't want to hear this, but I think Alabama looked much more impressive than Georgia did. I'm more impressed with where Alabama is at this stage of the season than where Georgia. Now it's only been one game. But, Milroe, this extra dimension of a quarterback that can run, listen, this is where it's at. Kirby knows of what he speaks. When you've got a quarterback that can run, like Milroe, 7 carries, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns, it's a difference maker, Matt. And I'll just put you on it right now. You line them up next week. Who you taking, Alabama, Georgia, on a neutral field?
Georgia.
You still take Georgia?
Yeah, because let me say this. The whole operation just didn't look right for Georgia yesterday. The whole offensive operation. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's not going to be good. Doesn't mean that's going to be the reason why they don't win the national championship. It just looked off. That's all. The operation just looked off. It could be it's the season opener. It could be it's the first time, for Boa being back as the play caller in that spot. The first time also Carson Beck as a starter, first time in 4 years. All of this stuff comes together. The offensive line didn't play well. They were without their number one receiver. All of that stuff comes together. That adds to it an operation that just looked off. Doesn't mean next week when they play, I don't know who it is, whatever sister of the poor they play next week instead of Oklahoma, doesn't mean it's not going to be a completely different game. Doesn't mean it's not going to be 65-0 and we all come out of there saying, now that's the Carson Beck that we all thought it would be. That's the play calling we all thought. Look, I know Boba gets so much grief, man. This is a guy who developed David Green, DJ Shockley, Aaron Murray, Matthew Stafford. I mean, do we have to go for, look what he's done. Look at the offenses under him. It's not, stop getting on Bobo. They'll get it figured out. He'll develop Carson Beck, and they'll be fine. It's just week one, it just looked a little off. That's all. And as far as Alabama, Griff, we all knew from day one of this competition, Milroe was the safest choice. He started a game. He won a game in the SEC. He came in the Arkansas game when it was a little dicey, made a couple big plays to get a little room for him. Then Bryce came back and they routed the Hogs. He's the safe choice. He's always been the safe choice. And I think they were probably looking, well, if we can get somebody late in the late portal that wants to flip, then great. And it's Ty Buckner, and Ty Buckner's not. He's just not the answer. So you've got Jalen Milroe, who looks like a better thrower. He's improved, Griff. He certainly has better touch on those flat throws. He's starting to be more accurate now in the intermediate throws. He throws a nice deep ball. I think it's going to be fun to watch him develop. It's a lot like 2016 when it was Jalen Hurts, and he was this unbelievable athlete back there, and he just developed week after week as a thrower, and he became a more dangerous guy. And by the end of the year, but for a ridiculous drive by Deshaun Watson, one of the best college football players in the last 30 years, Alabama wins another national title.
Yeah, hard to believe that era. Does it come back? Does it not? You're not sold on Alabama being better than Georgia. Listen. I'm not saying, I didn't say end of the year. I said next week. But
next week I would take Georgia. Next week
you'd still take Georgia. Okay.
Yeah, because I think Carson Beck. I think that operation is a lot more smoother than people think. And I think that they will do. It would be a different kind of game and a different kind of game plan. And I mean, these are all hypotheticals anyway. We should never deal with hypotheticals. But if we are, I would take Georgia. Yes.
That's what Nick Saban said. He lifted up the Coke and he said, it's a bottle of Coke. It's not a crystal ball.
Right.
He wasn't even sold on Milroe. I feel like that's a really, that program right now, I think they're going to get on a roll. As for Georgia, digging in a little bit deeper, I'd ask you this. You saw that game, so you probably got to see a little bit of Brock Vandagriff. Do you think at any point this year you're going to see a quarterback change at Georgia? Is it too soon to say, or do you think, because you're sitting there in Jacksonville, that's Carson Beck country right there, right?
Serious quarterback change?
Are you all in on Beck all year? Like,
yes,
okay,
100%. I'm with the guy that can throw it accurately. If you're going to ask me to choose a quarterback at any program, I want the guy that can make every throw. That's what I want. I know the guy that can run is dangerous. I get all of that. At the end of the day, it's much more dangerous when you have a guy that can make every throw, especially when you have targets like Georgia has out there. So yeah, I'm 100% Carson Beck. 100%.
Well, he's from Jacksonville. I mean, he's a big Jacksonville hero. You know, him and Tim Tebow, right there at the top of the list there.
I will say this though, and I wrote this in Saturday Down South. I want to see a little something. I want to see a little oomph from Carson Beck. He's too, and Kirby told me this at media days when he was on our radio show. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. I want to see a little fire, man. I want to see him yelling at those offensive linemen. I need more time. I want to see him, with his arm around a receiver. Don't worry, man. I'll get you next time. I want to see some of that. I don't want to see a robot. I want my quarterbacks to have a little emotion. I'd love to see that from him. It doesn't mean he's not going to be successful if he doesn't do that. I'm just saying I'd like to see that. That's all.
Yeah, and you might
Stetson was like that. You know what I mean by that? Like Stetson had a little oomph in him. And again, he may not be this great athletically gifted guy, but man, he made plays and they all fed off his energy. I want to see some of that energy from Carson Beck.
Well, it'll be interesting, and I don't know when they're going to be tested. Probably September 30th, because South Carolina, to me, and I said at the beginning of the year, we all like Shane Beamer. Anybody that knows Shane Beamer, you want that guy to win. You root for guys like Shane Beamer to win. But Matt, I think that program's in for a big fall this year. When I say big fall, maybe only 2 conference wins. I think South Carolina, I said it before the year, I think even more so now. I don't think that's going to be a program that's going to challenge many people. So I'll ask you this. Shane Beamer, he's 2 years in, had some big wins last year, beat Clemson, beat Tennessee, co-winner of the Spurrier Award.
Are you going to try and fire him right now?
How many years do you think Shane Beamer's got in South Carolina? What's your over-under? 5?
Every time. We're literally going to try and fire this guy.
I'm not firing him now. He's got time. How much time? He may go to Virginia Tech. How many years? I'm not saying he's going to get fired. I just want to ask, how many years is the over-under for him to be the head coach in South Carolina? I'm going to say 5. I'm going to say 5. 5.
He may also get the offensive line figured out and win 9 games this year. That's possible too. I looked at that team and I thought, they can't block anyone. And Spencer Rattler didn't throw an interception. He got sacked 9 times. He must have got hit another 20, and he didn't throw a pick. And he was throwing the ball accurately. All I was thinking was, man, Spencer Rattler has made huge strides, huge since last year.
I'm thinking there's got to be
Tim Griff. They could throw on anyone.
There's got to be some NIL money attached to the interceptions or something. And there's got to be some extra incentive. On the practical joke, and I don't know.
He wasn't making bad decisions. He wasn't the gunslinger. They was getting killed. So if they can protect him, I can't wait to see them once they figure out protections.
You didn't answer the question. Over or under 5 years for Shane Beamer in South Carolina?
I don't know. He likes it there, man.
Why
would you leave South Carolina to go to Virginia Tech in the ACC?
I'm asking a question. Over or under? Is he going to be there longer than 5 years? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm going to take the over.
All right. You got the over there.
I mean, we're already in year 3. So basically, you're running him out in 3 years.
I'm not running him out. I'm not firing him. I told you he may get another job offer.
It's always with you. It's just fire, man.
Not firing anybody. Not firing.
Right.
It's week 2. We're not firing anybody today. So I do want to get a prediction on the Texas-Alabama. It's a big game now. Texas beat JT Daniels and Rice. Rice actually looked pretty good. I didn't think JT played particularly well. I saw guys running open. Very different kind of offense. It was almost as if Texas didn't spend a whole lot of time preparing for Rice. Imagine that. This week they go to play Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Last year, 1-point game. What are your expectations for this game this week in Tuscaloosa?
I don't think either one of those teams are showing anything. I think Alabama was very vanilla with what they were doing. I think that's why you didn't hear Saban praise Milroe that much. I bet Saban's very happy where they are at quarterback right now. And in Texas, I think was very vanilla in what they were doing. It's going to be a fun game, man. I'll tell you what. If Texas can protect yours, that's going to be a problem for Alabama. That is going to be a problem for the Alabama secondary. And then you look at Alabama, Milroe, depending on, how vanilla they were and if they open things up a little bit, and if he is this dual threat guy, you're looking at like a, 38-35 game. But I think Alabama's going to figure out how to get the Ewers at some point, maybe in the second half, and a close game is going to end up being a big game. And it's going to be like 41-31 or something like that.
Yeah, 10 point. I'm with you. I think it's a blowout. I don't think Texas is going to stay on the field with them. I think it's going to be a 3-touchdown game. I think Alabama. What I saw from Texas, Matt. I don't talk about underachievers. I don't understand how Texas can have all these resources, and you've been the national and so educate me. You've been the national sports writer. I know you're an SEC expert, but you've done the national scene. You've been to Austin, Texas. Am I missing something? How can the richest program in the country, in the state of Texas with tradition, how can Texas not get over the hump? What's going wrong there?
Oh, it's been that way now for almost a couple decades, I should say, since Mac last had them in position, to do something big. It's 15 years now. So I think it's the right coach. It's the right coach that can get everybody aligned on the same page. And they haven't had that since Mac left. Charlie didn't do it. Tom Herman didn't do it. And I think you look at where they're at. You look at where they're at now with Sark. Sark is certainly a guy that you would think he's those measurables guy. He's everything you want. He's a young guy. He can recruit. He's a great play caller. He's an offensive mind. But the idea is he one of those guys that can get all of those guys on the same page, from the president to the boosters, all the way down, as Nick always likes to say, all the way down to the guy washing the uniforms. And I don't know that Sark's that guy yet. We'll see.
Well, they did not score an offensive touchdown on TCU last year. I will point that out in their own stadium. I will point that out. So for all the, so Sark After Dark will be taking on a whole new meaning in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. It's going to be pretty fascinating to see what happens to Texas. Personally, I think Alabama's going to destroy Texas there. It might be eating a lot of crow next Monday. Could be eating a lot of crow, but I don't think so. I feel pretty good about that. Now, there's 2 teams out in the Pac-12. Well, I guess there's 3. I guess I'll throw USC out there. Everybody, that's the vogue pick, is the Caleb one. And see, I'm looking more at Washington and Oregon. I'm looking more at Bo Nix and Michael Penix. And I know Caleb Williams is the Heisman guy, Matt, but I feel like Washington and Oregon, I think they're a little better defensively. I want to know what you think, though. We got 3. Should we include Utah? I mean, the Pac-12 really doesn't look that bad this last year.
I would say that if Cam Rising were healthy, I would say Utah is the top of that pack because those other three can't play defense. None of them can play defense. Dan Lang just doesn't have the dude yet. Lincoln Riley hasn't played defense in forever. Oklahoma, all of that, forever. And I don't think Washington's here yet. Washington doesn't have the dudes on defense either. Utah, I think, if Rising can get healthy, we have no idea where he is either, Griff. He still may be a month, 2 months from being ready to play. He tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl game. Typically that's a 6 to 9 month rehab. But even if you're cleared to play, it's not one of those things where you go out there and, hey, you're the same guy. You know what I mean? So can they hold on with those two quarterbacks? Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I don't know. If he can get back.
USC still your team?
No. If Rising can get back and he can get healthy, Utah is my team. But if he can't and they lose a couple early, it's probably going to be Washington. Washington probably has the best defense of the other three.
Playoff team?
No, I don't think so. I think they're all going to beat each other.
Okay.
I mean, it's fun right now to say the Pac-12 is going to have 6 ranked teams in the top 25 poll. I mean, who cares? It's at the end of the season. I think they're all going to beat each other. And the problem is they don't have that. They don't have the SEC built-in excuse of, well, it's the SEC. That's why we beat each other up. They don't have that, and now it's just the Pac-12, and that's how they're going to lose out on that.
Are you going to miss this 4-team playoff? This is the last year of the 4-team playoff and the conferences, the divisional alignment in the SEC.
Right.
Of those changes, what do you think you're going to miss the most?
Nothing. I will say this. I like divisions. I like division where you win a division championship, then you go play in the championship game. I do like that a lot. I don't like the one division thing. So I think they should keep the division, but I think everybody's going away from them now. I love the 12-team playoff. Love it. And I'll tell you why, man. Because it's an extra step and an extra 2 steps for some to get there, which means we have no idea what's going to happen in these games. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody gets a targeting penalty. He's out for the first half of the next game. You have no idea where this is headed, okay? And I think everybody always says, well, it's still going to be the same 4 teams, still going to be the same 2 teams. It'll be Alabama and Georgia. You don't know that. No one knows that. The more steps you have to take to get to the championship game, the more chances you have of something going haywire. I love the 12-team playoff. Love it.
Tournament sport. It's a tournament sport. We've gone from crowning a champion that, every week is no longer a playoff, as we used to say. I think you're going to see 2 teams with losses.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think you're going to see, because look, Griff, think about it. When you're at a 14 playoff right now, there's probably legitimately 18 to 20 teams that could probably make the playoff. Okay. Unless you got an outlier somewhere way out there that comes out and has a great season and gets in. Okay. When you have a 12-team playoff and you're battling for 12 spots, and they're all going to be at large too. The idea that they're going to do championships, no, they're not doing conference champions. When they do the brand new contract in 2026, which will still be 12 teams, they'll all be at large. And they may be at large for 24 and 25 too. So when you've got 12 open spots, you go from having legitimately 18 to 20 to almost 40 to 50, because you just got to get hot at the right time to get to that 12 spot. So I don't agree with the idea that we've lessened the impact of the every game matters, which is what has always been the mantra of college football. I think it's still there. I really do.
Well, as things stand, the top 4 teams all get a bye. So there's a huge value, obviously, to not having to take that extra step. Although some people are complaining because they want to see the playoff game in their stadium. And I hope they keep that. I understand that, second round, semifinals, they have those agreements, at least in this contract with the current New Year's Six Bowls, to play that. I don't have a problem with that, Matt. Would you like to see it go to home stadiums, or what do you think about the neutral sites? Yeah?
Yes. I think the 24 and 25 is going to be a little dry run, and they're going to go, the quarter's got to be at home too. That's what they're going to say, because I understand the first 4 get the bye. I get it, but the first round is not at home. You don't get a home playoff. I'd rather have the home playoff game. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to realize we got to put the quarters on campus too. Then the semis and the championship game will be bowls, and they'll keep it just how it is right now. how they'll rotate with those 3 games.
You think Georgia want to play their home games down in Jacksonville if they make the playoff? I mean, and I got to ask, I'd be remote if I'd
be going back to this now.
If I didn't ask the Jacksonville guy about what's going on in the city of Jackson, you got a new mayor. We're hearing there's going to be a new state. You've had this other mayor on your show. He breaks all the news on your radio show. I don't know what. You're like the bullhorn for this guy. You push his buttons. You get him to say all this. Lenny, whatever his name was,
Curry,
or whatever his name was.
Lenny Curry, good dude, good man.
Yeah, great guy. I bet you loved him. Like I said, he broke all the news on your show. So what is happening with the Jags Stadium? And is there going to be a couple years where the games, because, the rumor, there's going to be a couple years while stadiums, maybe then, the teams can, get one, or will they play it in Orlando? What's the crystal ball look like for Georgia, Florida, and Jacksonville?
I think there's going to be 2 years where they'll be doing renovations. There'll be 2 years. It's going to be a magnificent place when it's done, but there'll be 2 years. It's going to look a lot like SoFi in LA with that roof, the open air concept roof. So it'll be really nice. The luxury suites are going to be unbelievable. It'll be a whole. I don't know if you've ever been to Philly, the Xfinity Live area where there's shops and restaurants and all around the stadium out there. It'll be very nice, a lot like that. And there'll be 2 years. There'll be 2 years where the Florida Georgia game is going to have to go to campus sites, like it did in 94 and 95. And then it'll come back to Jacksonville, and it will come back to Jacksonville, Griffin. I know you don't like to hear this because Jacksonville will look up both of them and they'll say, well, do you want to earn, I don't know, $6 million each year, or do you want to earn $3 million every other year because you have the game at home every other year and you get your 3 million receipts as opposed to 6.5 or 7 million every single time you play the game in Jacksonville. And it's not even going to be a question. And I know you don't like to hear that. I know Kirby doesn't like to hear that, but that game's not leaving Jacksonville.
In Florida, fans are fine. I mean, it's 70 miles from campus, but I mean, you probably covered. You were covering Florida, weren't you, when the games were played on the campuses?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what was that like back then?
I got too, man. I got a picture at the goal line. Me and a few buddies. I got at the goal line, and it was at the end of that game. I don't know what that game was, 52 to something, 52-20 something. At the end of that game, it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to see that game in Sanford Stadium. It was a lot of fun the year before to see that game at Florida Field. So I agree with you there. There's no doubt about it. That game at campus sites is a lot of fun, but I just think there's a lot of tradition to this game. There's a lot of money given to each school. And I think we're going so far away from all the tradition of college football that I just think we need to hold on to something.
No, wait a minute. I just want to point out.
Texas and Oklahoma, same thing. They're not leaving the Cotton Bowl. They will not leave the Cotton Bowl. They could have gone to Jerry's World in Arlington and played the game there. And you know why they didn't? Because they like the tradition of Dallas. And it's comparable money to stay in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl as it was opposed to Jerry. But they stayed where it was because that's what it's all about. The Texas State Fair, the Cotton Bowl, the Texas-Oklahoma game. It's the same thing in Jacksonville. And a ton of money.
All right. Now, 6 minutes ago, you were ready to just ditch the 4-team playoff, the tradition of divisions.
There's no tradition of 4-team playoff. I love divisions. You heard me exactly what I said. Come on. Don't be putting words in my mouth, man.
But you're ready to go 12 teams, all at large.
Yeah.
The heck with conference champs. But boy, when it comes to Georgia, and you know what, it is funny though, because the people that love it really love it. And I get that, it reminds me of going to NASCAR races when I go cover that game, with the campers and the flags and the drunk people all over the place.
Well, how do you not love a game like that where when you win the game, you're the only people left in the stadium? It's just half red and black. And there's like scanned orange and blue everywhere. And you just know you just won that game against your biggest rival. What's better than that?
It's not bad. We see it every bowl season, right? It's just when you win in your home stadium, and I'm thinking about the Georgia Notre Dame game. I'm thinking about last year's Georgia Tennessee game. When your stadium makes a difference in the outcome, as the Swamp did for years and years under Steve Spurrier. What did he lose? 3 or 4 games there in 12 years, something stupid like that. That to me, and then when I was there, when I saw other teams win at the Swamp, when I saw Terry Bowden run out of there in 93 with a win, when I saw Tennessee get a win there with Casey Clausen, what a big deal it was to win in that stadium. Oh my gosh. the Jacksonville thing, it just, like Kirby said, I mean, the guys got to get themselves amped up. The crowd gets there late. It's not real loud. The student section's not really there. It's the same rich people that can afford the tickets and the trip. It's just not the campus environment. So, but again, you make good points. One of our guys, Jeff Santel, met his wife there. It's always going to be special for so many people. And I do understand the passion and I really appreciate Jacksonville. I like going down there. I mean, I enjoy it myself selfishly, but I feel bad for the city of Athens. As I was sitting in a restaurant last night with some Georgia fans, they said, boy, a lot of these shops around here are closing up. It's just not what it used to be. And I said, man, they need another weekend. And if you saw Georgia's home schedule this year, you know why. I mean, who's staying the weekend for UT Martin or Ball State? Woo-hoo, let's go downtown. And it's just part of it's the scheduling. So it'll be interesting to see. Let me ask you this. We talked about the biggest surprise of week one. What's the biggest surprise ahead? What's your sneaky play down the line? What's a team we're not talking about that we're going to be talking about over this first half of the season?
Kansas State. I really like Kansas State. And I think they're really under the radar right now. Chris Kleiman's unbelievable. He's a terrific coach. He's a guy that just develops 4- and 5-star talent out of 2- and 3-star players. I love what they've done. Excuse me, Griff. I love what they've done. They're a very physical team. Clearly, they weren't ready for that Alabama game last year in the bowl game. They got outplayed, out physical, out talented more than anything. I mean, Bryce Young's the best player in college football. We saw it. But they've got another year under that system. He's added a couple key transfers. He's got a quarterback that's smart, doesn't get him into trouble. They run the ball really well. They're a lot like North Dakota State. They have that mentality. Now, at North Dakota State, they had better players too. They don't have the better players yet. They're getting there. That's my team. That's my sneaky pick to not only win the Big 12, but to find a way into the playoff.
Well, I was just going to ask you. You nailed it. The final question of the interview. Your 4 teams for the college football playoffs.
Wow, already?
It's week 2.
This is just week 1. Week one's in the rear view.
Week 1's in the rear view. You're probably going to have to adjust. Some people had LSU.
All right, I'm gonna go Georgia. I'm gonna go Georgia and Michigan, Georgia, Florida State. What the hell? I'll take Kansas State.
You just said Kansas State.
I'll take Kansas State. What
I
the
like
hell?
it. Why not? I mean, if they win TCU made it in, losing the Big 12 championship game. Still street cred. I like that. Florida State, Michigan. We got 3 of the same teams. That's good.
Michigan. I got Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Kansas State, right?
Yep.
All right.
Down with that.
Might change too.
What's that?
Might change after week 2.
That's fine. This is
I reserve the right.
So this is a week 1 Monday night show. We're documenting it. This is on September 4th. Because you got to do that now. With Twitter, people save these clips, right? Remember when you said Kansas? Yeah, you mean before 3 guys got injured on the offensive line and 2, So It's documented. It's September 4th. Matt, I know it's hard to throw those opinions out there. We don't do the show in the parking lot. There was no preface for this conversation. You had no idea what you'd be asked. I asked a lot of tough questions, and I appreciate you answering all of them. Outstanding work, as always, a guy that I really respect and a really good friend of mine, Matt Hayes. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on the Ingles on the Beat show. Don't forget, Wednesday night, Jeff Santel has his recruiting show before the hedges. Thursday night, you get to see Kaylee Manziel on this channel. On Sundays, it's Connor and Coverage, and every day at 10 a.m., DawgNation Daily with Brandon Adams. We'll see you guys later.